welcome everyone to Sunday Sentiments.
Of course, this is a hate crime.
And if she's found guilty, then she has to face the consequences.
They normally end up killing some particular kinds of people.
It's a violation of human rights.
That's a very traumatic event.
So I just wanted to ask the panel about their own opinions on this topic.
Hello everyone and welcome to Sunday Sentiments. Sunday Sentiments is a segment on our YouTube channel where a panel comes together and discusses hot topics and current events from all across the world. Please do be aware though that the views that are shared on this panel do not reflect the views of Four Rings. These are everybody's personal opinions that they've decided to share with us. Thank you so much for watching and I hope you enjoy the video.
Today's topic is about America and the seemingly, well, at least some people would call it a problem that they do have with guns in their country. And I'm sure that everybody has heard many things about these incidents of shootings that they have, whether it is school shootings, mass shootings, or any other kind of incidents that they have just with guns in general. But if you don't know, here's a little short lesson, I guess you could call it that. America has built most, if not all of its laws upon the foundation of the Constitution, which is basically the supreme law in the United States. The Second Amendment, out of the 27 that they have in total, is the right to bear arms, which means that everybody in America has the right, if they're over the age of 18, to own a firearm. But the thing with this law is that many anti-gun people like to bring up is that it was written, the Constitution was written in 1777, I believe, and was put into use in 1789. So 233 years ago, when people used muskets that would take 15 seconds to reload. But these laws are still being used when people now have access to guns such as the infamous AK-47s. And I just wanted to ask the panel as a whole, do you guys see this as a problem? Is it something that needs to be updated, or do you think that the country is doing fine by itself as it is currently? Shika?
I think everyone around the world is just shocked. Actually, I think now we're numb. We're not even shocked anymore because every other week there's a mass shooting in America. And I think other countries do wonder what will it take until they do something about it. I was reading somewhere, I think it was on the BBC website, that says that between 1968 and 2017, there have been 1.5 million firearm-related deaths, and that this is higher than the number of US soldiers killed since the American War for Independence in 1775. So that alone, I mean, you would think that would be like, wow, that statistic would get people to think, this is crazy. We're not in a war zone. Why are people dying at these rates? Yeah, it is shocking. I don't know what else to say. It's ridiculous.
I think, just quickly, Catherine, that it's quite also important to note that with these, everybody else in the world can look at America and say this is a problem that so many people are dying because so many people have access to guns. But a lot of the citizens who are voting against having any of these changes is because they themselves have guns, and a lot of them have also been led to believe that these guns will save them in case they need self-defense. If somebody breaks into their home or if they're being attacked on the street, they'll have a weapon. So a lot of them believe, well, I want to protect myself, so I'm going to keep my gun. You can do whatever you want though. Catherine?
Yeah, I mean, that is a good point, Shakira. I mean, I haven't seen any statistics of how many people have actually been saved their lives by having a gun at home while somebody came in and they needed to defend themselves shooting. I just know that gun-related deaths, including suicides, has overtaken car crashes in killing children, which means from 0 to 19. So gun-related deaths is now the leading death for the children in the USA. So while they may be protecting them at home, they're certainly killing their children, and not just in school-related shootings, but it seems like in everyday life. And that's, I find, is, you know, horrific, whatever the argument is for maybe having a gun at home.
Yes, thank you, Catherine. It's also important to note that a lot of these, well, at least from what I've read, a lot of these incidents of children being the victims of gun violence is not always because they have had a gun aimed at them. A lot of the times it's also their parents not keeping the firearms that they do have safely locked away. A lot of them will maybe keep them just in a sock drawer where their kids can reach them, instead of a safe locked away where the kids or literally anybody else can't reach them. Imani?
No, I was just going to point out what you just mentioned about even in the home, it's not safe with guns around, because a lot of even toddlers, I've heard stories of toddlers somehow getting a hand on a gun because there's no safety. And then someone gets killed, either the toddler or a parent or someone nearby. So nowhere does it seem like guns really does what they claim it's supposed to be used for.
Yes, thank you, Imani. I think that a lot of these, like, they like to claim that these weapons are going to be used for self-defense, but if your weapon is going to be used against you by your your own family members, even your children, how safe are they really? But I'm also thinking, like, in the case of a home intruder, when you do notice them, how long do you really have to go to your safe, open it up, because you're supposed to keep all of the pieces apart, put your gun together again, and then be able to defend yourself? I don't think that you would have enough time to actually prepare yourself in those kinds of situations. Jamila?
That whole, rubbish about having guns in the house keeps you safe is ridiculous, because if you think about it, nearly every other country outside of America does not have that type of law to you're able to have a gun. How do you think those people are able to survive? Like, they make it so there's so many home intruders, there's so many of them that they all need guns to protect themselves. And I'm just like, well, if you think about it, if a home intruder doesn't have a gun because you're not allowed to have guns, and then you don't have a gun, then it's just you against him. Whereas if it's a whole thing about each person having a gun that can actually be lethal, then you can't technically defend yourself, because if that home intruder has a gun, then there's a chance of you dying and him dying. So having a gun in your home is not going to really help you if people already know that, oh, this person might have a gun in their house, I'm going to bring a gun myself to rob from them. It's just ridiculous. It just gives everyone a chance to actually, a higher chance of dying in situations. Whereas if it's just you tussling with one, there's a chance that you could, a better chance of you surviving than if you both have guns. That home intruder could get his hands on a gun as well in your house and shoot you with it. So it's not a valid argument, in my opinion.
Thank you, Jamila. I think it's also important to note that a lot of, at least the lawmakers in America, like to point out that, well, if we make it illegal, they're going to find another way to get it. Which, I'm sorry, but they use this argument for, this is a little bit of a leeway, but they use this argument for guns, but not for abortions. I'm just saying, because even in Denmark, I'm sorry, even in Denmark, we have these incidents of people owning guns. Like, you'll still hear shootings outside once in a while, but are our death toll numbers, I'm not saying in amount of people, because our population size is a difference, but it's still important to note that Denmark doesn't have that many incidents of people dying because of guns, because we have regulations about these kinds of things. Of course, it's still possible for people to access these weapons, because where there's a will, there's a way. People are going to do it anyway. But at least there's less people who are just able to just do it on the fly when they feel like it. Keshi?
I am going to be a devil's advocate and say that I am not for
totally removing guns from people's hands in the US. There's a reason why they are there. But I want to say that I am more for control of who gets to own a gun. For example, in the recent shooting in Texas, this 18-year-old guy who went and shot and killed school children and their teachers, this is an 18-year-old guy. And he just reached 18, and at that age, it was legal for him to own a firearm. On the other hand, he cannot buy alcohol until he turns 21. So that is quite weird in my opinion, because owning a gun is a big responsibility. So the law allowing an 18-year-old to be able to buy a gun, for me, that is the issue. That's the problem. It's the law that is there allowing people without doing background checks, without finding out about this person. Are they, like, I don't know if any one of you watched the movie, the documentary Bowling for Columbine, made by Michael Moore, or how easy it is to get a gun in America. People go, it's harder to open a bank account than it is to buy a gun. So for me, that's what needs to change, because we have a country where we have such issues with crime and violence that I think people do need to own those guns, because sometimes those guns are a deterrent to anyone who is thinking they can just break into your house and kill you. So yeah, because that's the nature of their country. What they need, in my opinion, is to change the laws as to gun ownership, gun control. We cannot compare Denmark with the US, because Denmark is it's smaller than even most of the states in the US. This is a federal country with 50 or I don't know how many states now they claim they have, 50 states plus. So you cannot compare ownership of guns with Denmark. You cannot compare the law in Denmark with the US, because they have different histories. They have different history of violence and crime. So I think in light of their history, they need to have those weapons in their hands, but there should be a control. That's just my opinion.
Thank you, Keshi. It seems like Shiko has a rebuttal, and then after I will be adding my point as well.
No, I mean, I'm just thinking, obviously Denmark cannot be compared to the US. And by the way, I'm with you. I agree that there should be more regulation. But I mean, I think Germany, for example, does have a history of violence or whatever with the war. And you could say, yeah, people were so affected that, you know, they could go around gun wielding and shooting up people. I just think the whole system is outdated. The reason why this amendment was initially made, I mean, we're not living in the Wild West or whatever it's called, the Wild what? Wild West. Yeah, it's just crazy that in a so-called developed country that people are not able to do without guns. We've got the UK, we've got Germany, we've got even developing countries where the crime is more, but the gun violence is not as bad as the US. So for me, your whole argument around this is their culture of violence and that's why they need protection and they need guns, for me, it doesn't really wash, and that's my opinion.
Yeah, my opinion, Shiko, is that, like I said, this is a huge country with big open spaces where people live, where there is actually the closest law enforcement is very far. So these people would actually be left defenseless if they didn't have any weapons. There, it would be open season for everyone to attack anyone. So we have to also have in mind their country and the way it is, that it's a huge country with maybe challenges regarding law enforcement. So people feel safer when they have guns in their homes to protect themselves.
But we also have a problem here. Like, you've heard cases of women who have been abused and the police don't turn up for hours upon hours, but it doesn't give people an excuse to have a gun with them.
Yeah, but the way your country is, your country, the landmass of your country cannot be compared to the US.
No, but you're saying that there's a
so
problem.
If the police is not coming, that's a policing problem. It's not.
But you just said that they have a problem with the law enforcement, and that's probably like why they should like fix that before it happens. So
Yes, I said the problem is law enforcement because of the huge mass the country is. Coming to the next police post would be the police location is very far from, let's say, these huge places where they are living. It's different from London or Liverpool, for example, where the least police station could be a few miles, kilometers down the road. So if the police is not coming, then that's their issue.
I'm just going to interject here as the host. Thank you very much. I also like to point out, just in, because I don't agree, Keshi, but that everybody has always says that police is only there to like do the investigations after the crime. They're not there to stop anything. They usually would be like if a woman has found like, oh yeah, somebody is tracking my car or something, they'll be like, well, we can't do anything until they've actually, you know, hurt you. They're not actually there to prevent crimes. They're there to investigate them after and then put the person in jail.
And doesn't that argument actually support the idea of people owning guns because the police are not doing their job?
You're saying landmass, the same can be said for Australia. The same can be said for Australia, where they have so much like space between all of the cities that people will be by themselves. That has happened on several occasions. But they've had, I think it was one mass shooting incident in the 90s. They banned all guns and they haven't had an incident since. And they can be compared because they have just as much land mass in between all of their cities, and you can say the police is so far away. People can be living in the outback in the middle of nowhere, where people can be like, well, I want to rob them, but they don't have these incidents with shootings. Imani, you will be speaking now. Thank you.
Thanks. I just wanted to mention that, first of all, I do think that the guns should be legal, but I also think that we sometimes, as Tadakishi mentioned, that the US is a country where most people don't feel safe. So maybe people are not, that's another reason why many are not willing to actually do something, make it illegal, because they don't feel they are safe in their own country. So I think if America actually wanted to make a change, maybe first of all, try to lower the crime rate. And how do you do that? First of all, they should make the prison system, for example, makes people come out doing more criminal things than actually helping them come back to society and get a job and all those things. So maybe if they actually focus on rehabilitating former criminals, then less criminal activities will actually happen. And maybe more people will start thinking we don't need guns because we do feel safe.
Imani, I also just wanted to say that I do agree that it is, at least for me, when I'm thinking of these points, I'm thinking it's impossible to confiscate every single gun that every American owns, because there's like 350 million of them, and it's like 3%, like 3.5 million recently in like the past like few years became gun owners. And then what about all the other millions of people who also just so happen to have guns? But I think the problem is the regulations that they need to actually fix, because they say that they do background checks, but there's some states where it's like if you have a gun like license in that state, you can just get one here automatically. You don't actually have to know anything. And they don't actually have proper regulations in place to make sure that crazy people don't get guns. Because the incident that Keshi mentioned about the Texas elementary school shooting, that man, I'm going to call him a man because they're going to call him a kid all they want in the news. That man bought a gun the day after he turned 18, and nobody thought that's kind of suspicious that you want to own a gun that bad. And also the way that they report these kinds of things, they will say everybody who's ever shot anybody has a mental health problem. But America does not care about mental health at all, because they don't try to do anything to prevent these kinds of situations, but they'll use it as a weapon to be like, well, this guy, he was a little bit sad, he was bullied, and that's why he decided to kill all these people. Well, why did you make it so easy for him to get a gun? That's just all I'm thinking in these kinds of situations. There's always a history that can be changed, whether that is gun or the gun laws or the regulations of background checks or who is allowed to own a gun. Because I don't think a 90-year-old man who's in Congress should be able to own a gun when he doesn't even know what an email is. Those people shouldn't be allowed to own guns either. I'm just saying, there's a minister of technology or something in America who didn't know how to send emails, but he was the minister of technology or something like that. Like, there's some things that should be regulated. There should be like a limit and like a minimum. You should be at least like 25 to own a gun and 60. That's it. Catherine and then Keshi.
Yes, I agree. I mean, obviously, it's very important to have much stronger regulations of who can have a gun and why. You know, in Germany, you have to give a reason why you need a gun. But I also think gun violence is a numbers game. So the more people have guns in their possession, the more likely a shooting will be. So in just reducing the numbers of guns available to people is already reducing the incidences. And I think also in America, it has become like a common thing, you know, that if you feel threatened, you grab the gun. What if you're really angry and you're having a fight with someone and you might be drunk or something, or you've taken drugs, and the first thing you do, because it's just a common thing to do, you grab your gun and you potentially shoot someone. It's just it becomes almost a common response to a threat, and that just cannot be. I mean, I find it really frightening thinking that I live somewhere where half of my neighbors are having guns in their house or even in their pocket. Would make me feel terribly uncomfortable.
Yes, thank you for your point, Catherine. Keshi, I think you have a point as well.
Me, I find that this discussion of American gun and gun control and gun culture is actually very politicized, because it's just Democrats against Republicans, and Republicans want people to keep their guns. Democrats want stricter gun controls and so on. So it's a very politicized issue in the US, but I think they should sit down and think of the impact their law has on just communities like this community in Texas, or the community in Buffalo, New York, where people going around their business were shot by a mass shooter. So what will it take? That's what I mean, to at least do something about it. It's up to them to decide what is the best for their country. Is it stricter gun controls or loose gun controls, or totally abolish the guns? We cannot, I personally don't think other countries can be deciding for them, because we are not in that country. But what I wanted to show is an international comparison of gun-related killings as a percentage of all homicides. And Shakira, you mentioned that guns have been banned in Australia, and still you have 13% of the homicides through guns. We have Canada at 37% and the US at 79%. And I assume that some of these places don't have the same gun rules as they have in the US, but you still have crimes, killings, homicides being committed by use of guns. So point being that it doesn't prevent gun crimes if you ban guns. That's my point. What I wanted to say is, we have one of our posters on our thread, Sunday Sentiments, who gave a good, asked a question: if a guy came in and broke into your house and wanted to rape you and violently violate you and kill you, and you had a gun there, so would you still be saying, no, I don't want that gun, I want gun control? If that was the way it was in your own country, there in the UK or here in Denmark, that you have people who go around attacking people with guns, would you still be of the same mind that those guns should be banned?
I don't think anyone on this panel wants the guns banned. I think we all agree that there needs to be stricter control, but also there's also America looking inward and thinking, what was the purpose of this amendment being made, and are things the same now, and what should they do? I really don't think anyone thinks, on this panel at least, has said about guns being banned.
I do, because if we don't have them here, then what's the, like, that's what I don't understand. Like, I just feel like they're all excuses for someone to have. I don't think those rules and those ideals were made to keep women who are going to get raped safe.
they were made to be given to people who actually enjoy violence, which is a lot of Americans actually. Because of this coming into play, I actually think that this whole thing of, mass shootings and stuff is also a trend of crazy people or just normal people seeing it online and saying, that looks fun, I'm gonna go get a gun. They have the excuse of being able to just go and grab a gun, which is what is keeps fueling worse and worse and worse. Every single year it gets worse. Whereas if there was none in the first place, there wouldn't be worse to get off of. You were saying before, Keshi, that there's percentages and stuff like that in different places, but are they as high as America? No. They might have them because people get them illegally, but you can do the same with a knife. There's a lot of knife crime in the UK as well. And those type of things are hard to stop because they're just there with someone 24/7. You can get a knife from a kitchen and stab someone with it. So guns have basically become like that in America. They can just go to their kitchen and grab a gun. Whereas, in my opinion, if you were to be stabbed by a knife, you might even have a better chance of living than if someone got a gun and shot you. So, like, I just don't agree with the whole gun thing. If there's people and places that can survive without guns, then Americans shouldn't be, gunning so hard to have them. It's just like, yeah, it's not fair, because then, like we all talking about here, they have other laws that allow these people who have guns to get away with it afterwards. I just think that if we're going to do this whole thing of, having a law to cut down or, keep gun violence like to a minimum, they should have a law of, if you shoot someone and you did it not by accident, all of this stuff, you should have repercussions. But they never have repercussions if it's self-defense. They can claim self-defense, all of this, when there's not enough evidence to prove that. It's not fair.
Thank you so much for sharing your opinions, because as you have said, you do disagree with these people. Well, not these people, the people on the panel, and do believe that guns should be banned, because in the countries where there are stricter gun laws, or if they're banned at all, those kinds of crimes have obviously gone down because people have less easy access to them. Mary Claire?
Yeah, while I agree with what Keshi said, her point, I think I'm on Jamila's side about banning guns in general, mainly because if you see the gun in America, I mean, there's so many people owning guns. Probably the last solution is for the government to just not allowing anyone to have a gun unless it's for protection. And also, I think people should really pass it through some kind of a test mentally to see if they are okay to have a gun, because if they can access a gun easily, it means they can use it easily as well, what they want. So if America hasn't been able to prevent the same problem, people dying every day because of the guns, owning the guns, banning them probably is the last solution. But then, as I said, when it comes to domestic abuse or women protection, probably that's also the last solution for them to own a gun. So it's really, in general, I think this is a huge problem that it's going to be a difficult one for America to really find a proper solution.
Yes, thank you, Mary Claire. It is, I guess you could call it a nuanced thing, because there are many angles that you need to look at when you're thinking of, should we ban it completely? Should it just be regulation? Should it be left as it is? Because well, not for the last one, but there are arguments for most sides of these arguments, like on exactly how it should be handled.
And just a point, Shakira, before Shiko, just a point is that Americans actually, state by state, they have different regulations about guns. So it's not a blanket, whatever, allowing guns, which I think should also be pointed out, because there are some states that do regulate but do not ban assault weapons, and there are some states with assault weapon bans. So the country doesn't have a blanket, and that's what we should be careful, because we are talking about a subject we probably should dig deeper into. Thank you.
Thank you, Keshi. I think it's also worth mentioning that I did mention that most of the laws are built on the foundation of the Constitution, as in they have that as a base and then they build their own laws off of it. Shiko?
Yeah, I wanted to say, first of all, a point that Marie Claire made about mental health. I agree with that. Yeah, people's mental health definitely needs to be looked at, their background, because there have been a number of shootings where mental health was also a cause to this violence, but no checks are made. Yeah, Keshi, like this kid that was bullied, this is somebody who obviously has an issue, or resulting trauma from that. Not everyone who has resulting trauma goes and shoots, but I think anyone with a trauma like that should not be allowed to have a gun personally, because people snap. I also wanted to say, for me, the other shock was learning the other day that apparently some schools in some states in America where there's little gun control have to have drills, gun drills, or mass shooter drills. I found that really weird, that they're trained in how to respond if there's a mass shooter. It's bizarre. I can't even get my head around that instead of being given, or in addition to a fire drill, you're trained in how to respond if there's a mass shooter. That's scary, to know that you're sending your child to potential death every day in certain states in America. The other thing I wanted to say is that there's no national registry, that is part of the problem. Each state is allowed to just do whatever they like. So some states regulate, some don't. And that means there's no national registry as to gun ownership. So somebody can go from one state where they can easily get a gun and just go around shooting people. Okay, I don't know why that screen is there, but somebody
No,
can
I'm
go
agreeing
around.
with you that states have different regulations.
Yeah, so someone can come from a state where there's tighter control, but because they have access, they go to another place and just shoot people. That's my point. So because there's no national registry, it's almost pointless that some places have a stricter control. My third point is that a lot of police deaths as well we've seen. So this is not just about mass shooters. There's just a big gun problem and a culture of violence maybe in the States, where we also know a high number of police deaths from shooting, just police using their guns to shoot innocent people, or people who didn't need to be shot. So I really do think, yes, maybe guns don't need to be banned, but America really needs to look inward and reflect and think, what is the point of 39,000 people a year dying from gun deaths? What is the point on 360 people every day, 360 people at risk of being shot? It's not a war zone, and there's no need for those kind of statistics.
Thank you, Shiko. I think it's also worth mentioning, because this was a point that I wanted to make earlier, that a lot of lawmakers in America, you can say Republicans want to keep the guns, but Democrats want to put stricter regulations. I think it's also worth mentioning that they all have had at some point the power to do at least something, but they haven't tried. For example, President Joe Biden recently put out a statement in regards to this Texas elementary school shooting, saying basically, in disagreement of this incident and how it was horrible and it shouldn't have happened. That's always the words that they used. This shouldn't have happened in this country. But do you ever do anything to fix it? No. I think it's also worth mentioning that a lot of these political parties, anybody who wants to run for president, it costs a lot of money. And I don't know about the Democrats, but at least I've heard a lot about the Republicans being funded by the NRA, which, if you don't know, that's the National Rifle Association of America. That basically are like gun advocates. And back in the day, they were apparently known for pushing, you know, the Second Amendment and stuff like that, so white people could defend themselves against the people that they tortured for hundreds of years, former enslaved Black people, who were then free and wanted to take back what they could. So they used what resources they had to try to fight back. And because they were scared now, they were like, all these people that we hurt are trying to hurt us back. The NRA and the KKK must work together to try to fight this and make it easier for them to get guns so they could fight against the former enslaved Black people. But now the NRA is funding, like they funded Donald J. Trump when he was running, so they could push this person to be president and then also be like, well, since I helped you, keep these little restrictions in place, or keep this in place, so where all these people are allowed to like have it easier in getting guns and stuff like that. That's what a lot of these companies and organizations, or whatever it is, do. They fund people that they think will be able to help them put in laws or fight for laws that will help them in the end. So that's why, like, even President Joe Biden, he can say that he's against this kind of thing all he wants, and so could President Obama have done the same thing. Donald Trump probably say the same thing, but they're not actually going to do anything because they're not going to really gain anything from it, because they do know that Americans as a country make a lot of money off of the guns that they sell.
Shakira, the president may want to do something about it, like Obama wanted to do something about it. Joe Biden wants to do something about it, but if the Congress does not support him, there is nothing he can do. So he may want, so we can't blame the president for something that he has no power over.
Keshi, I'm not blaming the president. I'm just saying they can say that all they want, but truly, I don't think I don't like people with that much power. They can say that they care all they want, but truly you can see that they don't. Because Obama can say that he cares about his people, but then he goes and bombs some schools in Syria. I don't like any presidents. I'm just saying, there's no argument that can be like, oh, he's a good person, he cares about these people, or he cares about that incident, he cares about, no. Because in the end, they are greedy men who did what they could to get into power, to the highest position in the country. And then they have it. Do they care about the people below? No, they don't, because they're up there. Mayor Claire and then Jamila.
So I don't know, I'm really finding this particular topic very difficult and complex. So to be honest with you, I'm just saying what comes in my mind. I'm just realizing how lucky and blessed we are not to live in America, because that's one of the things that really will prevent me to go and live there, because I really don't like guns. So it's just on a positive side, because it's good to hear what you ladies are saying. And it's one of the topics which it's hard to have like agreement, agreed to one of the things. And you just, as Keshi mentioned, it's just to know that different state in America has have different regulations. Hopefully, I just wonder if one of you or even America has looked into a state which managed to control gun mass better, and if America is trying to do the same as that state, or the rest of the state are trying to do, I don't know. I feel sorry. I feel sorry for people who live in America, as Chico said, who just is sending the kids. You're just praying to God that they come back safe. But imagine if you're a parent just sending your child to school knowing that they might not be able to come back. How sad is that?
Thank you, Mary Claire. Also to the thing that you were saying about different, well, Keshi also mentioned it earlier about different laws for the states, like different states. I'd like to also mention that states such as Texas, I think, and I'm not sure about any others, but at least know about Texas, have laws such as stand your ground and the castle law. The stand your ground law is basically like if you feel like you're in immediate danger, like the person in front of you is a threat to you as a person and your like health and well-being, you are allowed to stand your ground and defend yourself. And a lot of these, it will be used in incidents such as, well, this black man was looking at me and he was charging at me, so I shot him. And then they'll use stand your ground as a defense. The same with castle law, which is you're allowed to defend anybody stepping onto your property. You are allowed to defend your property as it was your castle. So there's been known incidents where people in Texas will literally just step a foot onto somebody's lawn and they'll be shot because they were warned beforehand.
Yeah, the same Texas you're talking about, Shakira, their governor also signed a bill called he signed a bill signed into a law called Permitless Carry Bill that allows the state's residents to carry handguns without a license or training. And Georgia also did the same. So yeah, different countries. And Marie Claire, you asked California, I think they have restrictions on guns. I don't know exactly what their restrictions are, but they're one of the states that restricts assault weapons.
Thank you, Keshi. You kind of did also reiterate that they are kind of crazy, at least in the South, aka Texas, a bit gun crazy. Jamila has a point to make.
I just think, like, you know, hearing more and more about, you know, why they can use guns is just making me think, like, are you at war with just a person on the streets? It just seems so like, you know, like it's making, first of all, people believe that they're kings and in charge of everyone in the world, you know, castle law. Are you kidding me? Defend your home no matter what. Are you in, you know, medieval England or something, defending your castle from like an army? No, you're not. And it gives people and Americans, when they already have, you know, these egos of like, you know, they have the power, they're in charge and stuff, and makes them think that they're better than any other civilian on the streets. I also think that keeping guns and people who, you know, advocate for guns because of their own safety is giving the excuse to the person who could end up shooting your child in school to have a gun. Maybe if everyone put together their ideals, the people who who have these safety problems, put instead of, you know, their selfishness first, you could all have enough power to change something. The reason why things can't be changed is because they know that the majority of America wants guns for either safety or craziness. So if those people who wanted safety actually were like, I don't think that we should have guns, maybe some change could have been made. But because they're scared of the people who would use the guns against them, it just makes everything worse and just double down on like the fact that guns should be there. Because people are scared of people using guns. It's just like a cycle, a vicious cycle of things like this. Like, you might want a gun to protect yourself from an intruder, but that gives another person the chance to have a gun and shoot up a hospital. It's just, and it's impossible to get out of that cycle, I think, because of the fact that they started having that law with people allowed to being allowed to have guns. So it all comes back to, you're allowed to have guns, and that's why there's a problem, and that's why you're scared of people coming into your house, because they could have a gun and actually kill you on sight. These are war weapons, and a normal civilian is allowed to use them. That's why I don't agree with. Someone in the war could use a gun to shoot an enemy, and then a random person who lives in their house can shoot a person for stepping foot on their house.
Thank you, Jamila. Shiko?
Yeah, I just wanted, good point, Jamila. People are not in a war zone, just living their everyday lives, so it's ridiculous. Yeah, I agree. I also wanted to say, for a country that goes on about human rights, abuses in other countries. America seems to think they're exempt, because I'm sure if this was some other country, and they have actually called people savages, you know, like in Afghanistan or Iraq, that they're, you know, savages going around shooting at people. Basically, that's what's happening in their country, but they don't want to look at themselves and say, this is a lack of regard for human rights, people's right to life, people's rights to security, and people's rights to health. So enough of America pointing finger at other people in, you know, other parts of the world, calling them savages for going around shooting women and children in villages when they do exactly that in their own country. Their kids cannot go to school without a fire drill being done first. Anyway, yeah, I think, yeah, we've discussed about this a lot. Obviously, none of what we say will have an impact on America, but yeah, I'll pass you over to Shakira to wrap us up.
Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please like, subscribe, and press that little notification bell to know when we next post any of our videos. We truly do appreciate the support. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.